people have helped me along the years, that it's kind of fun to help others.
Awesome.
It shows really the depth of your character and caring for people.
And I'm suave, debonair.
Yeah, and
devil may care.
And a head full of hair.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thinking or talking, I should say, about being creative and thinking outside the box, where are some places that people can locate leads from where they never have thought of? I mean, where is there some creative places, or how can they start thinking differently about getting those leads? You mentioned the networking and the referral groups.
Right. It really depends on the industry and the product. That's going to determine where you have to look. Are you selling a product that is only offered in the home to individual consumers? Are you selling B2B, business to business? Are you looking to sell to big corporations? Do you have a product or service that lends itself to trade shows and exhibitions? Mm-hmm. So those are some of the things you first need to figure out. Who's your customer? What's your customer look like? Identify that clearly. And then you can begin to develop leads in the form of names of companies, corporations, people, individuals that you want to approach. If you're looking to approach homeowners, I just had a guy come to my house yesterday with a product, and I'd called him and asked him to come. Where did I found him on the internet? I saw an advertisement on television that jogged something in my thought. I went to the internet. I did some research. I found a local guy who sells this particular product and called him and asked him to come over. So how is he reaching customers? In his case, because he's selling to individual homeowners, he uses Craigslist, he uses television, and he uses the internet. So, how do you develop leads? You got to figure out what kind of leads you want to develop. Somebody said once that the best source of leads is a list of names. And I always said that I think it ought to be a qualified list of names. For example, you might say, I'll go back to my buddy, the dentist. The dentist would be interested in talking to anybody with teeth. But would he really? I don't think so. He's going to want to reach people in a certain segment, certain market segment, mm-hmm. who have the ability to pay, who have insurance, those kinds of things. So it's got to be selective advertising. I see some of the local, I just use dentists as an example, but using direct mail. Today, the direct mail marketing industry has refined itself to the point that you can actually mail specifically to zip codes, to mm-hmm. geographical areas. You can control exactly where everything goes. The best way, of course, is not to try and do it yourself, but to get somebody who's in that business to do it for you.
Professionals always do a better job, yes.
I reckon, locally, Steve Leachman and his wife Fawn from Express Press.
Good company.
And they're experts. They know exactly how mm-hmm. to do that. They'll print the product, they'll design it, print it, and get it mailed for you. So, just to really answer your question, Cheri, there is no answer. It depends on the industry, the individual, the product.
Mm-hmm. I see it as, first of all, as in all marketing and sales and advertising, you need to know who your target market is.
Exactly.
And that will then help you determine where they hang out. And where I find these days so many individuals think it's just one area, that they can just use social media. And this is where you just shared, you really need to integrate all of your marketing. Direct mail marketing is still working, direct mail pieces. I mean, again, I know dentists, that's where I get most of their information is from direct mail pieces. But I also see them online. So they're using it together. They're integrating their marketing because they realize that there are people on social media. There are people that are not on social media. There are people that are watching TV, listening to the radio. So they're all listening. And then they're in tune to where their target client is, and that's where they're marketing. So, yeah, you have to have an understanding of who you want to reach.
I like to tell a little story. I teach using little stories. I like to talk about the fisherman, and the fisherman is interested in going after trout. Now, in order to go after trout, he or she is going to go up into the mountains. They're going to find a nice mountain stream. They're going to buy a decent fly rod and use some sort of a fly to attract them. And they're going to be happy because they'll catch exactly what they're looking for. On the other side of the coin, you're not going to go down to the shore and use a fly rod to try and catch trout in the Atlantic Ocean. They're not there.
Exactly.
And you don't want to talk about what you might catch with that fly rod. So prospecting for leads is no different than fishing. You got to figure out, number one, what are you going after? Who or what? Where do they hang out?
Yep.
And that always is the important question.
And for networking, what do they like to eat? What time do they like to eat? I'm talking about my fish analogy, okay?
Yeah.
You got to do a lot of research into who you're going after, so you don't, as you said, you don't waste your time.
It is. It's true, and that's where as Richard calls it, the 4-letter word comes in. It is work. You have to.
It's a dirty 4-letter word. Yeah.
Still my heart.
I mean, you do have to take the time to, just really get those skills and your knowledge together before you just, you don't just, again, you just don't take a dart and throw it at a dartboard and hope it sticks. You have to understand.
Well, here's a quote that I've used quite often is, have you figured out who your real customers are? Because generally, usually, maybe, your customers all look alike. So if you're a salesperson and you work for a company that's been around a little while, and if you have a brand new product, then this doesn't apply. But if a company's been around for a while, been selling product for a while, you go take a look at who you've sold to. And what you're going to find is that generally, usually, maybe, they look alike. They're in the same income brackets. They live in the same kind of houses. They do business with the same kind of people over and over and over again. And once you know that, then you can focus your efforts and you're not wasting time.
Very, very good advice. I know, listeners, I'm sure you're just scribbling away on those papers right now because this is just a phenomenal amount of education that we're getting right now from the sales professional himself, Mr. Bill Fitzpatrick. For those of you that just might have tuned in right now, taking a listen to us, and you can always, I know you're not real active on social media, and that's not where most people can connect with you, but I do know that here in the community in Brevard County, you can see him at the very actively involved in the Cocoa Beach Regional Chamber and the Melbourne Regional Chamber. So for those of us here in Brevard County, we have you right at our fingertips and get to know you better.
Absolutely. Absolutely so. On this program you and Ron are coming together with, can you go a little bit more into detail, or do you not want to divulge everything that you...
It's all secret.
It is. Knowing you, I was worried.
Here's some questions that I'm going to ask of the attendees, okay? Are you listening to what is being said by prospects, or are you really waiting to talk? Remember, our Creator gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth?
That's really an in-depth...
We need to use them in that way.
Hearing that.
We need to listen twice as hard as we're speaking. So are you really waiting to talk, or are you listening? We talked earlier about strategic alliances. Are your literature and your business cards portraying the right message? Do they really explain who you are and what you do? There are 5 steps in developing any kind of advertising or any kind of message that you want to send to the public. It's called AIDCA, AIDCA. And that simply means that whatever you develop, whatever you design, whether it's social media, whether it's your website, business cards, brochures, doesn't matter. First of all, does it get your attention? If it doesn't get somebody's attention, it's worthless. Once you have their attention, does it create interest? Think about yourself now looking at an advertisement in a newspaper. See how these apply. It has to create desire. It's got to do something to make somebody say, like me, with this product I looked at yesterday, I'm kind of I'm interested. I might want to have that. The next step, the 4th step, is called conviction. This is pretty simple. This is Richard and I looking at this brand new F-150 pickup truck. It's completely tricked out, see? So it got our attention. We got interested in it. The desire began to develop. And now here's the next step. We said to ourselves, I owe it to myself. I need to have this conviction. And last but not least, whatever advertisement or whatever you put out there in front of people, it's got to get them to take action. How many advertisements have you ever seen where there's no way to contact someone? Mm-hmm. There's no phone number. There's no website. There's no email address. There's nothing.
We see this a lot on TV. Just
Yes.
what you're saying right
Exactly.
there.
Oh, even on websites even.
I didn't see TV with no email, no phone number, and they put a QR code up there.
Yep.
I go,
Where's my cell phone? Where's my cell phone? Yeah, exactly. They don't think through the process of that call to action, which that is the most critical part of your.
Somebody gave me a business
message.
card the other day that they had designed themselves and had printed by Vistaprint, which is an online printer, and they do reasonably good work.
If someone's starting out that wants something, that's okay, but
But they don't edit. The
Right.
edit is up to you. Guess
Yes.
what? It didn't have a phone number on it.
and if you go to Vistaprint, there's great big banner up there that says, edit your work.
Exactly right. Exactly
Exactly.
right. So all of those pieces have, if you're going to design anything to attract leads, it's got to have all 5 pieces: attention, interest, desire, conviction, and action.
very
And we ought to go down and look at that pickup truck.
very simple process, but it makes sense. Definitely. Now, you're talking about, these are some of the things you're going to be sharing when you're doing the presentation. Let's talk about presentations, because I know that developing presentations can help you showcase your product, and it can also get you in front of a larger group of people. So what is your take on that when you're looking at selling?
If I can figure out how to get in front of a group of people to talk about my product, I'm going to be much better off. For example, I'm only going to make one sales presentation to 100 people, not 100 sales presentations. So if I can figure out how to
So
do
time
that,
management right there.
time management right there. But the biggest part of developing a presentation is understanding. We'll go back to people buy what they want from someone who knows what they need. Mm-hmm. You've got to figure out number one, what the need is. And we'll go back to you're going to listen twice as much as you talk. So we're going to spend some time with a customer or a client and try and get inside their head and figure out what it is that they want. What are their problems with their business? What are their problems with their life? What are their problems with whatever? Do you have a product that can satisfy that? And then that's all done before you ever launch into a sales presentation. You've got to do it, and it's an accepted process.
Yeah,
It actually has a name. It's called blueprinting. So that then when I've done my advanced work and I put my sales presentation together, I'm not gonna present to you every single feature that I have for my company or for my product. I'm going to only present those features that I see from our conversation that you have a need for. And if I do it right, then you're going to want the product. Now, how many times has any salesperson made the absolute best sales presentation they ever made in their life? And they get all the way down to the end and ask for the order, and the customer says, "Let me have your business card. I want to think about it." Everybody who's listening, please put your hand up, because we have all done
I'm
it.
putting 2 hands up here, because that is the one thing we all kind of don't even want to hear, but we know it happens too often.
Generally, usually, maybe, it's been my experience that the reason that happens is because you missed something. Number one, you didn't listen well enough, so you missed something in the presentation. You didn't drag objections out of the conversation and then resolve them before you moved on. And so when you get all the way to the end, that objection's laying right on the table. Now, we're going to talk about, in my seminar, we're going to talk about some ways which you can eliminate that problem. You'll never eliminate it totally, but we'll talk about some ways in which you can reduce the amount of times that actually happens and increase then your closing ratio.
In other words, you have to be prepared with your presentation, but you have to make sure that you're flexible